Right. Looks like everybody but Bryant. There's Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Barzee, I see you joined. Can you say something? Make sure your mic's working and no problem unmuting. Tom, can you hear us? I unmuted you.
I can hear you.
Mr. Barzee. Hello.
It is 6 o'clock, but I'll wait, Stephen, for you to get Mr. Barzee up and running before we get started.
It shows he is on and his microphone's active. So, Tom, I don't know if
All right.
you can hear us or can't hear us. Feel free to text me if you're having issues. But other than that, looks like everybody's in.
All right. Well, it is 6 o'clock. This is Eric Berlin. I'm the city administrator in North Kansas City. And given that it is 6 o'clock, Mr. Mayor, would you like to call this meeting to order?
Yes, let's call this meeting order. And Eric, you kind of take over.
All right, sir. Thank you. This is a special city council meeting of the North Kansas City Council pursuant to section 2.04.030 of the Code of North Kansas City. Council members Jesse Smith and Bryant DeLong, joined by Council member Zachary Clevenger, called for a special city council meeting to discuss the North Kansas City response plan to COVID-19. Councilmember Smith provided the agenda for this evening. The first item of which is data and other information sources relied upon to reach a decision to roll back the stay-at-home order from May 15th, 2020 to May 3rd, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. Councilmember Smith, did you want to take the lead with this item?
Sure. So first off, the main reason I called this meeting is that we didn't have a regularly scheduled council meeting before the stay-at-home order was set to expire. So I thought it'd be helpful for all of us to discuss and get on the same page with best practices, how we feel best to proceed. And so I wanted to start out by asking, Mr. Mayor, what sources you were looking at, what discussions you may have had that led you to the decision that you made.
Yes, can I respond to that?
Please.
Yes, I'll tell you, at the time I issued this stay-at-home order was May the 14th. Both Clay County and Kansas City, Missouri had set the same dates. Before extending the stay-at-home order on April 17th, I asked the city council whether I could change the order date if any information became available. I was advised that this order I signed said that it would be effective till May 15th, unless and until it is extended, rescinded, superseded, or amended in writing. Last Friday, after receiving new information, I rescinded the stay-at-home order and issued a new change to the date of 11:59 p.m. on May 3rd. Actually, the information I relied on in this was that I contacted Clay County when they rolled it back to the May 3rd. I also contacted our hospital, and after checking with hospital staff, I was advised that the hospital felt keeping the stay-at-home order through May 3rd would be appropriate and proper under the circumstances, as the city did not need to keep the stay-at-home order effective through May 14th. I have been provided the total numbers of known presumed COVID-19 cases in Clay County, not counting Kansas City, Missouri, had increased the week beginning on April 17th, the date entering the stay-at-home order expanding till May the 15th. Through April 24th, the date I entered the new stay-at-home order, which is effective through May 3rd, was a total of 7 cases with no additional death. This is an average of 1 per day. I might go a little bit further. This is not a real pleasant time for me. I really had no idea that I was going to be faced with these kind of decisions. And I'm doing the best that I can with the information I'm getting. And, you folks gave me this authority. I didn't ask for it. And so therefore, I'm trying to do the best I can. So hang in there. Thank you.
Could I ask a quick follow-up to you? And first, I'd like to say I do appreciate that this is a very, very difficult time. Uncharted waters. We don't have any, reference points since 1918 to go by. And this is extremely difficult. We're balancing resident interest around public health, business, economic. It's more to ask than any one person should have to shoulder. So you mentioned through April 24th, there were 7 new cases in Clay County, and that excluded Kansas City, Missouri, portion of Clay County, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I spoke with the Clay County Public Health Department this morning, and they mentioned similar that they have no jurisdiction over the Kansas City portion of Clay County, that they rely on Kansas City, Missouri Public Health to give them the numbers for that portion, which is a large chunk of the county. And did you have any of the numbers for Kansas City portion of Clay County at all at your disposal?
No.
Okay. That's my kind of bigger concern in the whole idea is that we're surrounded by, Kansas City, Missouri. We're kind of that island in the middle, and absent those numbers, it would be extremely difficult to make, a good decision on what that would look like.
Jesse, I really expected Clay County to come out with some direction. And so far, they haven't done it.
Nothing.
I'll be honest with you, if they don't get something out before the May 4th, I may change my mind. But hopefully they'll get it out, and hopefully everybody will you know, people have been doing this long enough now. They're kind of getting in the habit of it. I don't really believe that reasonable people are going to rush right out and bunch up in the crowd. Now, I don't know that, but you know, you would think that they would learn something. So anyway, we're going to hang in there until the last dog's on.
If I may, I do expect, I did talk to the health director, this is Eric Berlin. I did talk to the health director this morning. He had indicated it would be coming out later today, but I haven't seen it today or tomorrow. I do expect that Clay County should be issuing something tomorrow. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes, it was on the 5 o'clock news. Clay County would have that out tomorrow. I will say, and it would be great if we all did it on the same day. But what you got is one city versus a state. I mean, why don't they conform to what the state and we want to do? I don't know why Kansas City do they know something that we don't? When we wake up on May the 4th, that virus is going to still be here. When we wake up on the 15th, it's still going to be here. But how fair is this thing? You know, essential places are open. I can go to Super Walmart, which I have. I can go in there and buy my groceries, buy a pair of shoes, buy some jewelry. Marilyn went in and bought some craft stuff. But we can't let our stores open that sells shoes. And it's all going to be up to people to use their noggin on either the 4th or 15th. Marilyn and I will still wear masks and gloves when we go places. If we look at a store and it's crowded, we won't go in. I don't see the difference in the risk people are taking in 11 days if they follow instructions. And having shopped, I've shopped at Lowe's 3 times. I've been to the Walmart, as I said. I've been to several grocery stores. People are still not using masks. They're not using gloves. In these places, they're allowed to go. So are you telling me or anybody that I'm more likely to get this virus, say at Marodi's down here, than I am the Super Walmart store or Lowe's? No. And I know for a fact, and you probably all do too by now, that Marodi's has a plan, but they can't open. You know, they can control the number of people going in. It's a big store. The biggest problems, I think, will be the smaller stores on the distancing. But you'll still have to use your common sense. And like I said, I have a problem with Kansas City wanting to stand out from the whole state. And I realize that I think Platte County joined them, but there's no advantage to wait until the 15th that I know of. That's enough for now.
Councilmember Smith, were you raising your hand? Or?
Councilman Clevenger had something to say before I do.
All right. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead,
no problem. I'll make it quick. First of all, Mr. Mayor, thanks for hosting this meeting here. I think what the problem is, first of all, Clay County is, to repeat, supposed to come out tomorrow with the guidelines. I know we received an email from Rich Groves from the Business Council, and one of those emails had from the state Missouri Chamber of Commerce had a plan, guidelines that were sent out, which is pretty good as well. I think what the fear was in the beginning is kind of the unknown from the public and lack of a plan when we announced that we were amending the order, and others were too. I think people in Clay County, some of that was they were concerned about not having the plan in place right when they're lifting the date. I think that if we can get a good plan in place, and some of the stores like Richard mentioned, Marodi's, have a plan, I think that we need to at least look at that. Possibly some of these plans are going to come out with a lot of the fear is some of the restaurants and bars here in our town that they would be overrun with the overflow of people that are still locked down in their city. I think if you have in the guidelines some kind of capacity limits percentage, then that's going to ease some fears. And again, the people that are very concerned and want to stay in can certainly stay in. It's a big decision, and I'm glad we can sit here and talk about it tonight. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to call a meeting, is to get some information to allow the public to see that we're talking about this, we're discussing this, and we're going to try to make the right decision for the city, public health, and our businesses.
Councilmember DeLong.
Well, first of all, a note on the city differences in Missouri versus cities. The governor certainly left the door open for cities to do something different. I mean, he noted that several times. And particularly, I believe what he was thinking, and I think this alluded to another conversation with the governor, is that, you know, considering St. Louis and Kansas City, which are much different than in population density wise than the rest of the state. I mean, yes, you're right. In Brunswick, Missouri, you're probably less likely to catch this than you are in the middle of Kansas City. So I think there is some leeway in there that allowed cities to do something a little bit more restrictive. But stepping back to what I kind of want to say, I think one of the issues that we've had with this, at least with this last announcement, is just communication. You know, we did grant this authority. As you said, we granted this authority. That's correct. But I believe when you grant this authority, that there is some trade-off to getting information on why decisions are being made. You know, the residents and the public want to know why decisions are made, and they just haven't heard anything. They've heard the final decision, but they want to know how we got to that point. And I feel like there's definitely just been a disconnect there. I mean, yes, we grant emergency authority to allow expedient decisions to be made where we don't have to reconvene every time. And I've agreed with that. But I think the biggest issue I've had is definitely just not hearing any communication on why decisions are being made.
Mayor Stilo.
Yes, Brian, in a way, I really kind of have to agree with you that that we didn't get the information out there. And I think that we've learned from this. And I think that probably, I hope we never have to go through this again, but I think we'll know that have a little better idea of how to handle it. But yes, I feel like we should have got more information out to the public. Thank you.
Is there anything else on this item on the agenda? Councilmember Stewart.
Pierce has something.
No, I think Rita been having,
Okay.
she puts up the one finger. It's hard to see, Rita.
Councilmember Pierce and then Councilmember Stewart.
First, I would like to thank Jesse and Zach and Bryant for calling this meeting. I too agree that being able to be transparent and getting information out, whether we all agree with each other or don't agree with each other, is really important. And Mayor, I appreciate that you now see that as something that probably should have been done. But again, you're doing all you can do. This is an unusual kind of situation. I do agree with Richard. I too do not. I'm not in support of changing the date. I am in support of putting some parameters in charge. We just can't regulate or legislate common sense. So people are going to do what people are going to do. Here's the problem that we had because we didn't have information, because I walked my dog through the neighborhood all weekend. People were stopping me and assuming that on the 3rd, it's going to be like the Wild Wild West. Everything was going to be open. Everything's going to be ready to go. And I said, no, that's absolutely not the way it's going to be. Plus, it's a free country. You can make your own decisions as to where you go and don't go. And there are going to be limitations. I'm not fearful that everybody's going to come running in from Kansas City and crowd our bars and restaurants, and the police are going to have to get involved. I just really think that we've all been at this long enough and have enough sense to abide by whatever rules are put into place. I think changing the date now would be even more confusing because we went from the 15th to the 3rd to the 15th. I just don't see why 12 days would make any difference. And that's all I had to say.
Councilmember Stewart and then Councilmember Pearman.
Yeah, the 11 or 12 days won't make a difference in the virus, I don't think. But this virus, it's a virus, so what are we going to do when it comes back? It's going to come back. We just got to hope they have a vaccine by then. If not, then it's in the family of the flu viruses. So it's not going, I don't think it's going to disappear. So we got to try to get back to some normal. And I do favor change. You're not, I don't know which way you went on that, Rita, because you don't want to change the date, but the mayor said the date is the 3rd. If you don't like the 3rd, or I didn't get that, and you're muted, so I don't know.
I like the 3rd. Is what I was saying.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to make a bit of difference extending it again.
Well, exactly.
If we have
nobody's going to grow common sense in 11 days, you know. And the news tonight on Clay County said, and I'll give you an example. Don't quote me on the figure, but you get the idea of city chapels. If it holds 120 people, they're only going to be allowed to seat like 25% for the first part of this. This is in stages. And I think it was 25% on something like that. But I think we should go with a 3rd or 4th, how you want to look at that. I don't know why the 11:59 on the 3rd. Why don't they just say the morning of the 4th? But I don't see no harm in it. If I did, I wouldn't be for it. Our businesses are hurting. You know, they're going to be, some of them not come back, I'm sure. They're going to be financially ruined. And I bet you Rita can tell you that the food banks now, there's people going to the food banks that never been, you know. Anyway, I support the mayor on this decision. Yes, it should have had a way to get the information out, and we've learned from that. Certainly the mayor has. You know, having worked for the city, I've been through not emergencies like this virus, but floods. And you do have to give, you know, once you give that authority, you can't just sit there and keep calling meetings on their decisions. I think it's okay for this meeting because there was no information out, and now we know to get it out to the public better than we did. And so I had nothing at all against this meeting being called, but you know, it's not just the mayor. You know, you have an emergency response committee, and I think Valerie had something to say, didn't you?
Councilmember Pearman.
Are you done, Councilmember Stewart?
Well, for now.
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple things to say. One, I do understand that we gave the mayor the authority to make that decision. And I think actually that's the right choice in situations like this because they move so quickly that it is hard to get a group together and try to make those decisions. I know that I didn't really think through the wording of rescission, you know, the opportunity to rescind. I think I sort of made the assumption that we would either keep the date or move it forward. I never saw a possibility where we would actually move a date back. And frankly, I never thought Clay County would move the date back. And I thought that was personally the wrong decision from a county perspective. Missouri never moved the date back. They just set a date and then Clay County aligned with Missouri. So I understand that we gave the mayor authority to do that. And I appreciate the fact that it is very difficult to be a mayor and have to make those decisions. I remember the mayor saying to me at one point that he thought it would be a flood, you know, that would be a difficult situation. And here we are with a pandemic that none of us would have expected. A couple points that I would like to make. One, I do thank you to Councilmember Smith and DeLong and Clevenger for calling the meeting because I do think it's important to discuss. I did not call the meeting or ask to call the meeting because I did respect the mayor's decisions. However, when the decision came out, I didn't agree with it. I will be honest. But I also know it's hard to make those decisions. I have to say that I do think every day matters. I don't think it's one of those situations where, you know, 12 days, what's 12 days? I think every day matters. I think every week matters. I think every month matters. If we had moved a lot quicker on this as a country, we would not be in the situation we are today. I hurt for our businesses. I don't want any of them to go anywhere. And frankly, there's a part of me that looks at that 12 days and thinks, wow, that could be a boon for our business. You know, in those 12 days, as people flock to North Kansas City, However, it's also a boon for a pandemic. Are you more likely to get it at a, Myrado's or at a regular store than you are a Walmart? No, but the more you are in those locations, the more chance those viruses have to spread. And that's what concerns me. I agree with you that at some point, and it's likely going to be the middle of May, when we all start opening up, we're going to have to really figure out how to do that. And at work, I'm working on an effort to figure out how to return to the office, safely, how to be safe for our employees. So personally, I do think it matters. I think every day matters. I would like to see us move back to the 15th. I am not in favor of aligning with Clay County. I have several problems with Clay County, as many people do. But I would much rather see us aligning with Kansas City, where we are surrounded by Kansas City. And the other thing I'll say is it is actually not a flu, it's a coronavirus, which is very different. Might be similar in the way it transmits, but very different in the way it's affecting people. And there's a lot we don't know about this virus, and there's a lot we're learning every day. I'd like to allow for more time for testing, both antigen testing and antibody testing. And I'd like to recommend that we move forward to the 15th from the 3rd. And I'm sorry, Mayor, because I always do respect your decisions, but I disagree with this one.
Mayor Stilo and then Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I agree with you, but from what I kind of understand is that we're really not going to be out of the woods until we have some kind of vaccine. And everybody says, this is going to be a year and a half process before we have a vaccine. We cannot be shut down for that long. It just won't work. So sometimes, yes, you have to take a few risks. That's it.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, on the time thing, even if we open on the 4th, which I'll call it the 4th, it's still, if you feel unsafe, you don't have to go. Stay home. I can tell you, I'll share this with you on my personal life. I have at least 3 of the underlying conditions, and the most serious 3. If I get this virus, I'm going to die, most likely. But and if I go out and I feel unsafe, I just try and go home. That's the thing. If people have the option, if you open on the 4th, they have the option of keep just like they've been doing. They don't have to go to a different store. And so I'm still in favor of open on the 4th. It's just, I don't see a downside to it. I really don't. I don't think it's going to be a miracle in 11 or 12 days. You're still going to have to use the same common sense we are today on the 4th, on the 15th, July the 15th, August. If you really want to be safe, we shut everything down and not open it until this virus is gone. And we can't do that. That's all I got.
Councilmember Smith.
Did Councilmember Farr have something to say? He's been raising his hand for about 10 minutes. Did you want to talk, Tom?
Yeah, eventually.
Go ahead.
I'm in firm belief of what the mayor's going to do. I agree with Mr. Stewart. I mean, everybody's got to use common sense. I mean, I work as an essential provider. I work in an auto parts industry. We have people come in with masks, without masks. You're going to have to use your common sense. Period. Said and done. I mean, what difference are our stores than from a Walmart, from the grass pad? You can go to a grass pad and go buy flowers. How is that essential for our economy? I mean, I'm in full leaving the date alone, and let's go forth and let's use our common sense, and hopefully everybody else will too. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
So Eric, were we wanting to stick with the agenda, or we're just kind of sharing thoughts at this point?
It seems to me that this is more of a work session than a formal session. So however works for you.
Okay. I'd like to respond to a couple things. First of all, I've heard it over and over and over again about if you don't feel safe, just stay at home. But I can't say it loudly enough. That's not how this works. If people are coming into our city with the virus or in the metro with the virus, and it brings and it's brought into North Kansas City, it doesn't matter if you stay home. If you have any contact with the outside and the virus is peaking here, it comes to you. It's not, you can't just stay home to avoid it once things have gotten that bad. So I agree with Valerie. Every day matters here, every single day. And if we align with Clay County and we're fully surrounded by Kansas City, Missouri, we are inviting 12 days worth of pent up demand into our city limits, into our restaurants. Every single one of the restaurants that's open, every business becomes a potential point of outbreak. And that's something we're deciding to do if we act independently of Kansas City, Missouri. I am not an expert in epidemiology, but I do look to those who are. So I've got a study from Johns Hopkins University that talks about how we should reopen or how states should be reopened. And the 4 guidelines they use are: 1, the number of cases, new cases has declined for at least 14 days. We're not close to that right now. Rapid diagnostic testing capacity is sufficient to test at a minimum all people with symptoms. Clay County right now is administering, give or take, a couple hundred tests. They can't test anyone without symptoms because they're too backlogged with symptomatic people. Kansas City, Missouri is about 500 tests a day, and they're running out before noon, generally speaking. We're not close to the testing capacity to know what we don't know. The third item is the healthcare system is able to safely care for all patients, including providing appropriate PPE for healthcare workers. Now, at that point, we're okay right now. If the virus doesn't spike, we're okay with our healthcare system capacity, but that could evaporate very quickly. Look at other cities and other states that have seen it happen. And number 4, there's sufficient public healthcare capacity to conduct contact tracing for all new cases and their close contacts. We don't have that yet. It's just not there. So 4 guidelines, we have 1, and we're looking to roll things back out. It's too early. And we're acting within the larger Kansas City limits independently. If we do this and it brings a second wave, any positive that would happen for the businesses at reopening at this point would evaporate. A second closure would be devastation for the economy, for the businesses. We simply can't have that. So if we act too quickly and we invite a second wave, we've dealt a death blow. If we wait, we could see some failures. And I agree with that. Hopefully these federal programs, the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL, those are starting to take hold. They're getting more applications in, more funding. And I can't over exaggerate the importance. I did a poll on an online Facebook group with 80+% residents of North Kansas City. This isn't, the wider metro. This is mostly North Kansas City, and 85% of those people, plus all but 1 person that's emailed, 2 people that have emailed me have said, please, we have to be slower with this rollout. We can't be too quick. And I propose, just like Valerie does, that we align with Kansas City, Missouri, given our geographic spot in the metro and what it could mean to be open for an extra 2 weeks while they're still closed. That's what I got to say on that.
Councilmember Pierce.
I too think every day is valuable. I wasn't trying to imply I don't think every single day is valuable. The problem that I have, well, there are a number of things. I'm still going to stick with my opinion to stay with the date, but Clay County is going to open. Restaurants are going to open there. Our residents who are feeling restless are going to go to those establishments. They're going to meet with the same people you're saying are going to flock into our city. The risk are going to be about the same. If I were, and I'm not saying I'm going to go to a restaurant in Gladstone because it's going to be open and hang out with everybody who's there and then come back to my city, I'm going to be bringing the same sort of thing as you're implying would happen if we open up our doors and all these people come rushing in that don't live here. I don't really see the difference. If something opens, a store's open, restaurants open, there are going to be the same number of people who go to them, whether they live in our city or don't live in our city, and then bring it back to wherever they live. I don't think it's going to make any difference in that regard. you know, and I think just a personal thing, using things like terminology like death blow and whatnot, I think further kind of incites people. Like I said, I walked through the neighborhood this week and people just thought we were opening all the doors and everything was going crazy. And that was all of our fault. We didn't have enough information. The mayor's already taken his share of the blame for that. There was a lot of misunderstanding in regard to what is essentially, and a really good idea, an informational meeting. So, you know, we're going to have people wandering from one place that's open back into our city. I don't think we're going to see a whole influx of people dashing in here, particularly since there's already going to be restrictions in place.
Councilmember Stefan, had you been wanting to be recognized earlier?
Yes.
Please go
Can
ahead,
you hear
sir.
me?
Yes, sir.
Well, the way I understand it, if we, with the opening up of May 4, that's not a return to normal. That's a return to a new normal. And that's in line to the Governor Parsons' show me strong recovery plan. And that plan, it's kind of been touched on, but it has 4 pillars. And those pillars are to expand testing. That's an important thing. Expand personal protective equipment, PPEs, reserves. Expand hospital capacity and predict potential outbreaks. That's a plan that is deliberate and is data driven. And when the restaurants open up and retail businesses, when they reopen, it will be on unlimited restrictions on occupancy based on the building square foot. And that information would come from building code occupancy or fire code occupancy. And the way I understand that, if the structure is less than 10,000 square foot, then only 25% or less of the occupancy is allowed into the building at one time. But if the structure is greater than 10,000 square foot, then 10% or less of occupancy is allowed in. These guidelines are based from the president, vice president. I understand the CDC, Governor Parsons, and also the Clay County Health Center. So the mayor, we gave him the power to do this, and I support his decision to move back to May 4. It's a complicated situation. I don't want people to get infected, but I'm positive that late fall, early winter, there's going to be a second wave of this. And I'm very vulnerable to having problems if I get it based on my age and health. But we have to start opening up these businesses. And it's not opened up like it was. The businesses aren't going to be like they were in January when it's open. It's a new normal based on the recovery plan of the Governor Parsons Show Me Strong recovery plan and his 4 pillars. And as far as the straw poll goes, that's an interesting thing on straw polls, but you can't, respectfully, I can't put much credence in the data that's received unless you have a standard deviation. And to get that, you're going to have, you got your N number, I suppose, how many was the number of people surveyed. Then you got to get your variance and square the difference. And then you come up with a standard deviation. Without that kind of technology, it's pretty frivolous, I think. And I say that respectfully. That's why we pay people like ETC to do the surveys. It's not a straw poll. And so the validity of that straw poll, reliability, I don't have much faith in it. I'm sorry. But that has to be pointed out. And that's about all I have. Except I'll conclude by saying I understand that May 4, it would be under the guidelines of Governor Parsons' Show Me Strong recovery plan. And that's the way I understand it. And if I'm incorrect on that, I'd like to be corrected. So going forward, right now, based on that information, I support the mayor's decision. That's what we gave him the decision-making power for. Thank you.
I see several of you wanting to be recognized. Could I call on Councilmember Clevenger, Smith, and then Pearman? Or Councilmember DeLong, you a while back you were too. So
Go ahead, Ron.
we'll go in that order if we may. Clevenger, Smith, Pearman, and DeLong.
Just a couple of quick things, and I know other people have things to say as well. One of the pillars is the testing, which, you know, we would love to have more testing. From watching the news and the data that we have available, it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to have widespread testing until June or even later. I know the president's plan was like for states to do 2% of their population per month, I thought it was, but I mean, that's not near where we need to be anyway. I think what the fear, again, I'll say what the fear was, is that we've got to educate the public and we got to let them know what the guidelines are, let our businesses know what the guidelines are, whether it's Clay County, whether it's us. So, but as far as testing, I think it's going to be a long road before we get a bunch of tests, but I hope we do. We need to push for those for testing. So.
Councilmember Smith.
A couple things on that. So the straw poll, Fred, I honestly have no idea what you're talking about with squaring differences on standard deviations. It's a straw poll. We had 85 to 15. That's a pretty strong indicator. Plus, I've received 24 emails. It's overwhelmingly from our residents that they don't want to go back to open, even at the new normal on the 4th. That's not really a topic for debate. It's very clear on this. Our residents don't want the new date. I can't say it any more clearly. On the topic of data, our testing is so low, we don't know what we don't know. Tennessee opened back up for restaurants in a day. They also increased their testing capacity, and they saw a huge spike in cases because they're testing more people. Now they know, not because they opened the restaurants, but now they know because they're testing more people that they have a lot more cases, and their restaurants are also open. So they're going to start to see things spread. That's a problem that we don't want to have. On the topic of plans and guidance, yes, we have the Governor's Show Me Strong plan that was intended for a state that is mostly rural. We have 2 major metropolitan areas and 2 minor metropolitan areas and a lot of rural land. That plan is intended mostly to work in rural areas while the cities provide their own guidance. With that in mind, the Show Me Strong plan has no capacity limit for restaurants. I confirmed this with the governor's office. I called him today. There is no capacity limit on restaurants. As long as you can keep 6 feet apart from each other within the restaurant, they have no capacity. Yes, I know that there are retail limits, and I made sure to specify the difference. The 10,000 square foot, 25%, 10,000 plus 10%, only for retail, not for restaurants. Now, Clay County has floated the idea that they might, at some point in the next day or two, maybe release a plan that may or may not have some limits in addition. We don't have that plan, and we're literally 5 or 6 days out from opening up. That puts restaurants in a terrible planning situation. How do they staff up? How do they act appropriately? Are they going to try to layer on their own rules and have to bring down the iron fist on their customers trying to show up and buy their food, trying to show up and eat at their restaurant, that's not a place we want to put our people. So the fact that Clay County unleashed this new order timeframe with no plan in place, it's very irresponsible. And then for us to have nothing to give our businesses, how do we expect them to operate correctly? Even if we trust people to have common sense, we still need the guidelines, and we just don't have them. I don't know how we expect this to work.
I'll call on Councilmember Smith, you done? Just one quick thing. I have seen the draft county plan, and it does call for restaurants and bars to be limited to 25% of building and fire code occupancy. That's the draft plan, assuming that that is in the final plan that would hopefully be issued tomorrow. Councilmember Pearman, Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Pearman.
That's what they told me this morning when I talked to the Department of Public Health, that they were looking at 25%, but they also said they would likely go with what the governor had. So at this point, it's a draft. It was also supposed to come out at noon today. It hasn't. So I really don't know what to depend on from them, but we're still less than a week out from reopening with nothing. So.
Councilmember Pearman.
Yeah, I just had two quick things. One on the, I don't know why I'm responding to this, but on the straw poll thoughts, it's not my straw poll. But I guess conducted my own straw poll. I just talked to my neighbors and my neighbors in my ward. So, and I will tell you that I agree with Jesse that at least in our ward, and maybe Councilmember Stephens is different, but at least in our ward, the people I've talked to have been overwhelmingly in support of aligning with Kansas City. And the second thing I'll say is that, not everyone has the flexibility, to stay at home. So if you don't want to go out, you have to stay at home. Well, this is impacting workers as well, who may or may not have underlying health issues. So I know some folks on the council are retired and some folks are still working. And for the most part, we seem to, as a council, have the luxury, which is nice, of being able to work from home and make choices, but unfortunately not everyone has those, and that's both good and bad. And then the third thing I'll say is relating to the, I do agree with extending the time for testing and also for planning and preparation, because it's very complex. We're navigating new waters that we've never done before: restaurants, retail, cities, businesses, small businesses, large businesses, and there's a lot that needs to be done. And I think it's prudent to take the extra time to do it better. Thank you.
Councilmember DeLong.
All right. I just wanted to touch on, I keep hearing a lot about the date, but for me, the focus is a lot on who we align with at the end. Geographically, if you look at Clay County versus Kansas City, we are an island in the middle of Kansas City. It would make common sense to align with Kansas City. It makes no sense to align with northeastern Clay County, which is a totally different population than what we have going on here in the dense area of the Kansas City metro. So as we keep talking about dates, I just want to focus on who it makes more sense to align with, and to be that island in the middle and to go against the rest of everyone else just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then I'll add the feedback I've gotten from my residents is they don't want to be a control group. They don't want to be an experiment. They have been adamantly against this, completely against aligning with Clay County on this. I've maybe heard one feedback on someone indecisive, but I've yet to hear anyone that thinks aligning with Clay County is a fantastic idea. That's all I have for now.
Councilmember Stewart.
Well, when I chose the other two, I figured to say I don't think anybody here is going to change their mind. We can vote and get it over with. What else can we say? Than we already said. I know there's going to be so many wants to go with the 15th, and so many of us going to go with the 4th, and we're not going to change our minds.
I think I saw Councilmember Clevenger and then Councilmember Smith.
I did want to let you know that I did speak to Gladstone, which is part of Clay County as well. I think they said they were aligning with Clay County, and I've checked with Riverside and Platte County, but I believe Platte has left theirs on the 15th as well. you know, it's such a fine line between public health and, you know, trying to help our businesses as well. I think what the problem is that people are worried about the plan. There's no plan in place. I think, I mean, even as a city, if Clay County doesn't come out with a plan that has the restrictions, there are things that we can add into that. But, you know, as far as putting a restriction on the restaurants would be pretty easy if Clay County doesn't do that. I've been agonizing over this decision for the whole weekend. And so, but, you know, some cities are going with Clay County and some of them are staying with Kansas City. So it's just, it's here. Nobody's on the same page, it doesn't seem like. So that's all.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, you're correct. Some of the cities are aligning with the Clay County order, but if you look at the map, all of those cities are in northeastern Clay County. They're all together in that portion of the county. We are not. We are an island within the geographic boundaries of Kansas City, Missouri. Like Bryant said, what makes more sense? Do we align with a group that's up and away there, or do we align with the city that we sit wholly within? And aligning doesn't necessarily mean going back to the 15th hard stop. It means what Kansas City, Missouri does, we also do. And I have on good authority from the mayor of Kansas City's office that they're also looking at potentially moving to May 8th. So they've got the 15th right now. They've not said that they're making a move, but they are discussing it internally. So if we align with Kansas City, Missouri, we have a concerted opening of this portion of the metro rather than up there opens, you know, we kind of they open. The guidelines would be consistent with theirs. It would be one rollout of the metro area. Clay County can do what they're going to do up in the northern part because a good chunk of that's also going to be a little more spread out, a little more rural. We're more dense. We need to stick with the guidelines of the more dense populated area.
Mayor Stilo?
Yeah, well, you know, I kind of agree with Rick. You know, I think that we're all just kind of reciting the same thing. What do we do here? I mean, do we make a decision, or what do you suggest?
I see Councilmember Stefan and then Councilmember DeLong.
Well, I think we should go through the entire agenda before we do anything.
Councilmember DeLong.
All right, I guess these questions could either be to the mayor or Eric. So since we've talked about this now, I want to know what coordination has occurred with Kansas City. What conversations have we had? What have those conversations been like? When's the last time we talked to them about what their plan is?
City staff has not been talking to Kansas City. Councilmember Pierce.
I agree with Fred that we should hear the whole agenda before we make any kind of decisions. But my question is, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the two sides of the fence, if you will, would be to continue with the date we have and then adopt Clay County's plan, which we don't know what that is, but still have the opportunity to amend it, or to move to the 15th and stick with everything Kansas City says at this point, not to adopt a plan all unique and of our own. Am I correct or not correct in that regard?
Councilmember Smith.
You are essentially correct. We either go with Clay County and open May the 4th and with their guidelines, whatever they end up being, possibly amended, or we align with Kansas City, Missouri and open when they open, not necessarily the 15th, but could be the 8th, could be, but we open with them on the day and time with their guidelines. Those would be essentially the two options on the table right now.
Thank you. That's what I thought we were saying, but everybody had so many different opinions. All right, that makes it a lot clearer after the agenda has gone through.
Councilmember DeLong. And then Mayor Stilo.
Actually, I think the mayor had his hand up before I did. He might have been replying to what I asked.
Mayor Stilo.
Where is the agenda?
You mean where are we on the agenda, sir?
Yeah.
We're at item 2 still.
Yeah.
But we've talked about everything on there.
Okay.
We got
I guess I don't have an agenda. Okay, moving on.
Council Member DeLong?
Well, I was going to ask the mayor if he had any answer to if we coordinated with Kansas City at all, or if we have recently.
The what now?
Have you had any conversations with Kansas City about their plan and their date, and just in general? Have you had any conversations with Kansas City?
No, I haven't.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything more on this item, or is that Mr. Barzee that I hear?
Yeah, everyone was just sitting there, and maybe I have a suggestion that you might want to consider. Just a couple of factual things. The council passed by ordinance, as we know, granting the mayor the authority that I think a number of you have gone that way, have alluded to that, or even specifically said that. And that ordinance can only be, and the mayor has entered an order pursuant to the authority granted by the council in that ordinance. And the only way you could vote differently, I mean, to take that from him or to make some modification, would be to amend that order, that ordinance in some way, which is not on the agenda, which technically would require another council meeting. But as I'm looking at sort of the numbers, this is the strange part about it. It all points back to the mayor, because if it's 4-4, he breaks the tie. Or if you leave it to his best judgment, as he sees or doesn't see stuff from Clay County, I think at the very beginning, he mentioned that if he doesn't see something, he may end up changing his mind. In any event, it seems to me, unless I'm, reading the numbers as I'm looking at the screen, I'm talking with my hands and nobody could even see me. But as I'm looking at the numbers, it seems to me that what we have is an order that's been entered, and I believe validly and legally. And what you can do would be, if you really wanted to, is you can pull some of that back or make a change in what he can do, et cetera. But that would require an amendment to the ordinance itself. And to amend an ordinance, as you well know, it's going to require 5 affirmative votes to do that. And right now, I don't see, how that would be, other than the mayor making that decision again. So it still falls back on the mayor. Am I making any sense, at least what I'm saying to some of you? I'm just trying to explain what I'm seeing. I'm not trying to advocate it. But I am going to add one personal thing. You don't know how many phone calls I've had with the mayor about this. And I've actually gone in on 2 occasions, the draft and the orders that he asked me to draft, and have met with him. And to see how he has really struggled with this. And when he got a little bit choked up at the beginning, I'm just telling you, he's had me choked up a little bit too, as I've talked to him about this. This is something that's weighed on the mayor's mind. And I would say this, I've represented the city the entire time. Mayor Stilo's been the mayor. And clearly this has been, I believe, Don's most difficult decision that he's made as the mayor. And so I don't know how to resolve. I think it's been a wonderful discussion. And I think the mayor acknowledging, what I think Councilman DeLong or whomever it was brought up about communication, that can always be improved. Although once we found out what Clay County did, it was pretty quick after that. Mr. Berlin and I were on the phone a conference call we placed to the mayor pretty quickly after we heard about that. And Mr. Berlin can talk more about that if he'd like, but that's what I'm seeing here in your meeting tonight. Not trying to cut off any discussion, please continue to discuss things, but that's what I'm kind of seeing. And it seems to me, it ultimately, whatever you do, it kind of falls back into the mayor to make the final, quote, right decision, whatever that may be.
So as a matter of process, I think in order to change anything, if I'm hearing Mr. Barzee correctly, it would probably take 5 of the council members indicating by consensus that they wanted to have a special meeting further on in a couple of days to take some kind of action. Councilmember DeLong.
It would only take 2 to call the special meeting, right? Then we'd vote in that meeting. It's the procedure, though.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
So at this point, if I'm to understand what Mr. Barzee said correctly, we would essentially, the council doesn't have the authority to make a decision here by vote or motion. So we would be reliant on Mayor Stilo. And Mayor, I can see it on your face. I can see what you're going through with this. It's just an incredible amount of pressure to make the call. I know what I'm hearing from our residents. I know that you have their best interest in mind all the time. That's your sworn goal as the mayor, is to look out for the residents of the city and the businesses. And I know that this is very difficult. In the absence of any reliable data sources, because the testing is so low, the best path forward is caution. And I would advocate that, as I've stated it a couple times, that you reconsider the alignment with Clay County. Strongly advocate for that. That's coming from our residents, and I'm just speaking on their behalf. Eric, if we want to see where consensus is at, I think it still makes sense to at least take an informal vote to see where the council is at on aligning with Clay County or aligning with Kansas City, Missouri. Even if it doesn't have a legal binding impact, it would be good for the record to see where we all stand officially.
Sure, we can do that. I do see Councilmember Stewart asking to be recognized, and then when you're ready, we can do that vote.
I just don't accept the majority of the residents. So that may be the majority of residents contacted Mr. Smith, but I got 2 that wants to stay with the 15th. It's what I got, and I got others, but 3. I didn't get about 5 emails. They got all our email accounts. The only thing I seen was the Facebook thing, and Mr. Smith and I both read that. And a lot of the people that commented was against changing. But if you put your mouse over on the thumbs up thing, there's a lot of people that agrees with the new one. They just didn't verbalize it.
That's not.
But it doesn't matter. We got to make the decision. I don't believe the majority of the residents want to go to the 15th. Now, it doesn't matter how many emails you got. I don't believe it. It's easy for us, I think. There's not a one of us here that's lost a dime probably since this thing started. We haven't lost our jobs. I bet your wife's still working, Mr. Smith. I see you raising your hand. You probably still got your benefits. If you don't, you're the only one tonight that probably does. I think the majority of people that live in the city that has a job and they've lost it want to go back to work. And we're not costing them anything. I don't think they're any safer on the 15th than they are on the 4th.
Is the council ready to take what I guess I'd call an informal vote on what I understand to be the question of aligning with Clay County or aligning with Kansas City, Missouri? Are you ready?
What would be the purpose of it?
Well, Councilmember Smith asked for it. I guess if there were 5 members who indicated they wanted to make a change, then that would indicate that we might have a special meeting in the future to make some kind of a change.
And now you mean the change, just like with me and Rita a while ago, you get confused on which
I
one.
think by that, I mean aligning with Kansas City, Missouri instead of aligning with Clay County.
Okay, as long as
That's
you
what
just, just make the vote clear what we're voting on. We don't want to vote on the wrong thing.
So that's what I understood Councilmember Smith to be suggesting, was that the choices between aligning with Clay County as the city currently is, or aligning with Kansas City, Missouri. So may I just go around and ask if you all are ready, and we'll at least get that determination. Councilmember DeLong.
Are we doing this as a yes, no, or are we doing this as picking a political subdivision?
Political subdivision.
Political subdivision.
Okay.
Do what?
So, Councilmember DeLong, do you want to clarify what you meant, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wasn't sure since we didn't have like a formal question asked per se what exactly we were asking. But as you said, I guess the question you're going to go around and ask people whether or not we should align with Clay County or we should align with Kansas City.
Yes, sir. I'll ask the question
Okay.
that way.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll start with Councilmember Farr. Would you favor aligning with
Valerie,
Clay
did you have-
County? Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, I
Councilmember-
I assumed I went first because it's April and it's my month to go first. So I was ready.
Oh,
And you
I'm
and
sorry.
unmuting.
I apologize. I didn't have the order in front of me.
Eric, would you like
but-
me to call them in order?
Please, but you please do. Yes. Thank you, Crystal.
So Councilmember Pearman, Clay County or Kansas City?
I prefer to align with Kansas City.
Thank you. Councilmember Clevenger, would you like to align with Clay County or Kansas City?
Clay County with the caveat to amend it if we need to.
Councilmember Stewart, would you like to align with Clay County or Kansas City?
Clay County and the state of Missouri.
Okay, Councilmember Stefan, would you like to align with Clay County or Kansas City?
Clay County,
Councilmember Farr, would you like to align with Clay County or Kansas City?
Clay County,
Councilmember DeLong, would you like to align with Clay County or Kansas City?
I would like to align with Kansas City.
Councilmember Pierce, would you like to align with Clay County or with Kansas City?
I would like to align with Clay County.
Councilmember Smith, would you like to align with Clay County or Kansas City?
Kansas City.
So the way
So,
I have it, 3 people were for Kansas City and 5 people were for Clay County.
Councilmember Smith.
I do have a question, and this was just brought up, so I don't know how to quite react to it, but how have we not talked with Kansas City at this point? How has that not been a discussion? We've only talked with Clay County Public Health Department. We have not talked with Kansas City in any capacity, and we are wholly surrounded by them geographically. We've had no discussions. Like, how is that even possible?
Well, we have people who are attending regional meetings that include Kansas City and others. So we are involved in regional conversations. But no, sir, we have not had bilateral, at least the city staff has not had bilateral conversations with Kansas City. Mayor Stilo.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Kim is really involved in this, and she's been involved with the Kansas City and everybody. So yes, we've had input from everywhere.
Chief Hargis is also involved with the regional conversations.
Right.
How would the council like to proceed at this point with the agenda?
Item 7 seems pretty good right now.
That is a adjournment on my agenda. Councilmember DeLong.
Can we at least get an overview, since we're already here, on what staff's plan is going forward with city operations?
Yes, sir. I assume you did get the document that I sent you yesterday. So generally speaking, we are planning on maintaining a protocol which looks much like the stay home protocol now. City Hall lobby will continue to be closed to the public. We found that we can really adequately serve the public without having the lobby open, and that would maintain maximum social distancing to continue to doing that. All employees who are able to work remotely will continue to do so to the greatest degree possible. Any employee who is coming to work at any point with a degree of over 100.4 degrees, we are directing should stay home. And if they feel ill, they should take sick time or be allowed to work from home for 72 hours. When at work, employees are encouraged to wear masks. Whenever employees are face to face with each other or with members of the public, they should wear masks. The city has purchased a quantity of washable, reusable masks for distribution to employees. So as we begin returning, we will ask employees, we will distribute those in a way that makes good sense. But we do want employees to do that when they're face to face with each other or with the public. Of course, we encourage frequent hand washing. And we will have soap and hand sanitizer available. We will also have disinfectant. Have had and will continue to have that. We will disinfect at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. Fire department will refill our disinfectant as needed for each department. Any common areas where employees might congregate, such as a break room or a copy room, will have strict social distance protocols, and we will disinfect those at the end of each day. We've established some protocols for the proper use of food in the common refrigerator. Won't allow more than 2 people in the employee fitness room at the same time, and they have to employ social distancing, and we'll have to wipe down equipment before and after each use. We have no official city travel, that's suspended. If any employee who's either previously been approved for vacation or requests it, they're going to have a discussion with their supervisor about that. We want to know where they're going. If they leave the metropolitan area, they're subject to an unpaid 14-day quarantine period upon their return. Depending upon where they might be going, we'll determine all those things on a case-by-case basis. That's the general protocol. City Council, I plan to continue doing these meetings virtually for at least as the duration of phase 1, whatever that duration is. And then of course, we did also provide you a department by department listing of just exactly how each department will deploy during phase 1. Councilmember DeLong.
Can I ask something about meetings real quick?
Yes.
If it's safe for everyone else to go back to work, why would we not go back to work next Tuesday at City Hall?
As the head of the staff, I wish to maintain the maximum social distancing possible at this time to protect city employees and the public while continuing to provide proper city service to our constituents.
Thank you. And just a couple others in general on the plan. Any time frame yet on when you think people will start coming back into office? Or maybe you said that and I just didn't hear.
Well, however, what the duration of phase 1 is. So
okay.
Right now we are aligned with Clay County. When Clay County indicates that we are heading into the second phase of recovery, then at that point, we would look at changing our protocol during phase 1.
Okay. And are you taking any special consideration the fact that, school is still out and, people originally had plans to have their kids at school, maybe even a daycare, and then that's just not possible right now? Have you taken in those sort of things account and how you're going to deal with employees like that?
Yes. Kelly, the TIPCO, the Parks and Recreation Director, has actually talked about looking at establishing some kind of a program for those parents and their kids who might be in that situation. And we're going to survey the employees to see who might be in that situation and who might want to employ such a program.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Councilmember Pierce.
Before we adjourn, I would like to again reiterate how much I appreciate Jesse and Zach and Brian putting this meeting together, regardless of how the votes went. It was very informational. We got a lot more information than we had going into it, and I appreciate the time and effort you put in making this happen. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Smith.
Eric, do we have any guidance from the state on how this impacts unemployment benefits for folks in North Kansas City once we're back open? If they're supposed to be working but don't feel safe and they don't go to work, it's my understanding they're not able to claim unemployment any longer. Is that the case, or do we know?
If Casey Campbell, our human resources manager, is on the call, I might ask her to comment on that. Casey, are you on the call?
I am on the call. So yes, they would not be eligible for unemployment benefits, but and we've had that concern come from the department heads. We are going to make the workplace as safe, as sanitary, and provide all of the necessary face shields, masks, and make employees feel comfortable coming back to work. Part of the questions in the poll that will be taken from the employees are identifying those individuals that are not, for the reasons that they don't feel safe and for daycare issues. We will work with them on an individual basis.
Appreciate that. And I have full faith that the city's going to handle this well. My concern is more along the lines of the rest of our residents or folks who work at the businesses here in North Kansas City who are now open coming on the 4th. If they are in the vulnerable population or they don't feel safe, they are now forced to make a decision between their paycheck and their health because they can't draw unemployment anymore. That's not great. I'm also curious, we haven't heard from Chief Hargis, who's been the coordinator on all this, if he has any input for how we move forward with this, or if testing or any other information he can provide.
Chief Hargis, do you have any comments? And then I saw Councilmember DeLong and then Mayor Stilo.
The only comments on the testing is we're working with Clay County. They're assuring us they're going to get some tests in. Don't have a firm date on that, but that's where we're at on the testing process with that.
Councilmember DeLong.
Yeah, so I guess I just had a question in general about business continuity plans and kind of what the city's doing now. Are you taking any consideration in the future and keeping some work from home rotations or, anything like that, just to prepare for potentially another wave of having this come back?
We are going to look going forward, virus or no virus, at some work from home options. I had been somewhat resistant to that idea in the past, but it's been working so well in a lot of ways during this time that it's convinced me that it might be something that could work for us in the future. So we will be taking a look at that. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, I would agree. Definitely. I mean, my workplace, we work from home 2 or 3 days a week anyway. So there definitely is a perception sometimes at not being as efficient, but you get the right people, you got the right people doing the job no matter where they do it. All right. Thank you.
Mayor Stila.
Yeah, in the answer to Jesse's question, just about every person that got a hold of me was really concerned that they didn't want it to go back to work because technically they could make more money on their stimulus and, childcare and everything else. They could make a lot more money at sitting at home than they could if they went back to work. To me, there's something wrong with that situation, but, I think people need to work.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. People do need to work, but we are now forcing people's hands to say, if you are in a vulnerable population, you, in a sense, have to choose. You have to either go back to work or don't get any money, and that's tough.
Councilmember Pierce, and then Councilmember Clevenger.
I do not have the statistics on this, but I would hazard a guess that the majority of the population of North Kansas City does not necessarily work in North Kansas City. They probably do work in Kansas City metro area. As a general rule, are places that will continue to be closed down through the 15th. So I don't know how big of a problem that is. I don't know how many residents who live here will be forced back to work, or not, and I don't have the stats on that, but I would assume that the majority of residents who live here do not necessarily work in North Kansas City, and they would not be forced back to work under this alignment with Clay County.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Well, again, we're still going to have the virus on the 15th. And even if we went back and had the order to the 15th, people would still have to go back to work in somewhat of an unsafe environment. I mean, I feel really bad because I know that some of our residents want us to align with Kansas City, others with Clay County, just trying to make the right decision here for the city as a whole. So, you know, we need to be communicative going forward. We need to have a good plan in place so that we can get these people to feel safe when they come to North Kansas City or they get out in our town.
Is there anything else for tonight? Councilmember Pierce.
I move to adjourn.
Councilmember Farr, it looks like, is agreeing. City Clerk, could you please call roll for adjournment?
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.